Well, suffice it to say, one of the biggest stories of the last year has been artificial intelligence, how companies are implementing it within their structure of their firm, but also how the public is using it as well. Plus, there are so many questions about what lies ahead. Pleasure to be joined once again by Stefano Puntoni, Wharton Professor, to discuss what we've seen over the last year. Stefano, great to talk to you again. How are you, sir?
Great to be here. Thanks, Dan.
Well, let's start right there and just get some general thoughts on how you have viewed what we have talked about, but what we have seen play out around artificial intelligence in the last year.
Yeah, so this is the end of the academic year, a good moment to reflect back on the last few months. So we've been meeting every month since last summer, and I was giving some thoughts to what were the biggest stories over that course of that year. There are many, actually. One could spend a lot of time dissecting that, but let me give you maybe three top line ones. The first one is that the models keep getting better, and there were a lot of discussions around last summer on maybe the progress slowing down and maybe those scaling laws on training, meaning bigger models performing better, were running a bit out of steam. In fact, what we've seen is that the models have continued getting better. A lot of it is because of those scaling laws in inference that we've discovered, where the same model is going to perform better when you make it think harder. And so we are still seeing rapid improvements on all kind of metrics. So that has been, I think, the biggest story. And many people were not expecting that necessarily. The second one has been over the last 6 months, really the taking off of agents. There have been discussions about agents already for over a year, but for many months seem to be more of a promise or a speculation. But they're really here. And they are here now in terms of coding agents. So they've been taking over basically coding almost everywhere. And you've seen the rise of personal agents with Claw bots and lots of other initiatives by many companies. So that's really another big story. And maybe the third pillar here is that there really continues to be two races in AI. There's a race at the high end, the top US labs investing massive amounts of money to build bigger, more sophisticated models that keep breaking all the benchmarks. But there is another race, which is to make models more efficient and for smaller models to perform better and better. And so those are races around model efficiency, about maybe open weights models. And here's where China has seen also very strong improvements. So those will be my three top line stories for the year.
So let me follow that up by asking you kind of the role that companies are taking right now in
Mm.
terms of the use of AI and how they expect artificial intelligence not only to improve their operations on a daily basis, but what their expectations are. I mean, I would assume a lot of people have talked about this kind of being a beginning of the internet moment once again with AI. Are we, seeing businesses plan 5 years out already for the use of AI? Or because of how things are continually changing still, is it still not not developed to that point with companies?
Both companies and consumers are adopting AI very rapidly. Companies' investments in AI are booming, and also the costs are booming. In more recent weeks, a lot of the headlines have been about the token cost. That basically we're going to have to see huge budget being spent on AI tokens. And the pricing of the AI labs is changing from those more subscription-based and limited use sort of subscriptions to pay per use, so token-based pricing. And basically the usage is exploding. To me, the funny thing here is that last year, looking back a few months ago, what has changed? Well, last summer, everybody was worrying about are we overbuilding? There's this overinvestment in capex in data centers, and so much money is going to this. Will we ever need all this compute capacity? And people were worried about the AI bubble that way. And now instead we are in a compute crunch and we haven't got enough compute. And so everybody's worrying about that and saying there isn't enough. data center, then we need to build a lot more. So I think that is really a sign of how things have been changing, I think.
Let me get we already had comments this week from Masayoshi Son, the CEO of SoftBank, talking about the AI revolution being 50 times bigger than the dot com boom. When you hear a statement like that, what do you think?
I don't know, about 50 times bigger than the internet. It's hard to know. By the way, SoftBank is now the most valuable Japanese company, taking over Toyota in market cap. So certainly Masa has got
Oh
something to
yeah,
talk about. And in terms of the relative importance compared to the build-up of the internet, I think it's comparable in many ways. It's difficult to know which one is bigger. I do think that the arrival of such a smart artificial intelligence models is really a momentous change. I mean, for society, for humankind overall, I think we don't know where this ends. We don't know how much better these models can be, but in a way, they don't have to get actually much better than they already are to
yeah.
change everything. Change everything. Yeah.
And because let me slide back to the public consumer part of this. As we have seen all of the different models update seemingly week by week or sometimes day by day, it feels like that the development of AI is kind of bringing the public along with it, correct?
Well, yes and no. It is bringing public along. If you look at AI takeoff, AI usage, I mean, today, over a billion people are using ChatGPT, for example.
Yeah.
On the other hand, one of the big stories of the last few months, I think, has been a growing AI backlash. We've seen that in many ways, from personal physical attacks on AI leaders or companies to very strong negative vibes among young people. Like in recent weeks, for example, there have been several commencement addresses in college campuses that have been booed when people were talking about AI, things like of that nature. So I think it's a mixed picture. Clearly, people are concerned too.
So then doesn't that put even more focus on how the regulatory side plays out as we move forward with all of this, correct?
Well, regulation is obviously very important, like it is important in everything. I don't think that we should expect very strong moves by the federal administration in the US anytime soon, although I don't know. But I think we have seen a lot of activity and action at the state level. And of course, the AI Act has become law in the European Union. Um, I think this is a tricky thing. On the one hand, we do want safety, and some guardrails are probably needed. On the other hand, we really don't want to stifle innovation, and we really still don't understand exactly how this technology is going to land and what the real concerns are. So we are in a moment of rapid change. Regulation should be deliberative, should be consultative. It takes time, and so I'm not an expert on regulation, but certainly
Right.
this is going to be an area where we're going to see some discussions in the coming
S- s-
months.
Okay, so then if that's at least one area of concern, are there other things that you are at least watchful of that you want to be I don't necessarily want to say wary of, but at least you're thinking about in terms of potential concerns as AI continues to develop?
Oh, many things. In terms of company usage, I think we have to understand the trade-off between cost and benefit. For example, the token costs, they have not been priced accurately before because these companies have been running through massive burn rates. And the moment that people are going to actually pay for the tokens, we're going to have to see some calibration on what kind of tasks and jobs do we really want to use this technology for. You've got, I think, exciting development in physical AI. I think it's going to be one of the most interesting areas in the coming months. So we've seen a lot of interesting development at the boundary between robotics and AI. And for consumers, to me, personally, one of the most interesting areas that I find is how AI uh, can basically become almost like a relationship partner for consumers in different shapes and guises. But how do we deal with the technologies that have such human-like features, and we've never had anything like that before?
Are
So
are
lots to learn about. Yeah.
are there areas beyond that maybe even further out that you are very interested to see how they play out in terms of the impact of AI in the culture?
I think there's many interesting things. I can tell you about one project that is we are working on right now. It's still not even submitted for a journal review, but I'm very excited about this. It's together with it's led by a postdoc in the marketing department of Wharton called Ben Leiter. And what we are doing here is to study what we call synthetic contact. The idea that um, you might be able to improve intergroup relations by having AI impersonating a member of the outgroup. And we do it in the context of political polarization. And we
Right.
show that basically even brief interactions with a member of the outgroup impersonated by a bot, for example, a Democrat talking to a Republican bot, is actually creating less animosity and more warmth towards the outgroup. And people realize that actually these people are not, you know, strange creatures or monsters. But actually, AI can help people empathize with outgroups. This is just one example of the many,
Yeah.
many, many applications that we can think of.
How has this past year that we've been talking and all of the things that have occurred, has it impacted you as a researcher and a professor in terms of just everything that has gone on in the last year?
There's so much changing, and I think I probably not saying something that others are not experiencing, which is it can feel quite overwhelming. The
Right.
pace of change is so rapid, and especially for those of us who are not the super tech adopter early kind of person tweaking with AI agents on your little Mac, PC or whatever. If we are not the kind of people, then I think this change can be unsettling, can be difficult. It's
Right.
also it's a strange paradox because on the one hand, it's incredibly empowering. Those of us who used coding agents like, say, Claude Cowork or something like that, find that your capability frontier has expanded so much. There's so much more that you can do, and
Yeah.
so easily it feels very empowering. At the same time, it's also feeling threatening, and you wonder about the value of your skills and your ability to keep up. And so it's this very mixed feelings, but I think overall, I find it an incredibly exciting technology. And every day I get, I experience awe and amazement when I see what it can do.
Stefano, it's been fun talking to you this last year. Enjoy your summer, and we'll see you next school year. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Dan. It's been great talking to you all year.
Thank you. Stefano Puntoni, Wharton Marketing Professor, joining us here on the show.